And today, as I named this as a special session, I sort of meant it in two ways. One is we haven't had a session like this before, so this would be like a standalone session. And the other is it feels really special in two ways. And one of them is that Lamia, Kiran, and I, and then Shaan later, and I'll introduce them in a moment. But Lamia, Kiran, and I started talking earlier this year about the work they were doing about decolonizing development and a master's program that they were in at Emory University. And we sort of connected around the possibilities of transformative education and doing regenerative development work where we might not even use the word development. We would want to be regenerative enough to decolonize the language. And we just all hit it off. We're like, wow, you guys are cool, mutual. And it was like this, sort of mutual admiration. And then when they escaped from the confines of university, they just jumped they jumped right into some really deeply resonant and aligned work in India. And then with aspirations to go to other parts of, I would just say, the Southeastern Asian part of the planet. So you could think of the Himalayas as maybe a more accurate or more holistic anchoring than the subcontinent of India itself. And for those who don't know, India only exists because a tectonic plate collided with Asia to create the Himalayas. And so they're all part of the same Earth systems process. And so what I'd love to do is just have an opportunity for Kiran and Lamia and Shaan to introduce themselves. And then they're going to give a presentation about some of the work that they're doing. You're going to see that they're basically like another arm of the design school already in what they're doing. And it's just going to be deeply resonant with what we've already been building up in the Colorado Basin and the Great Lakes and so on. But within the rich cultural flavor of another part of the planet. And then what we want to do is have an exploratory conversation together and, asking questions, having discussion about, what do we do together? Because, they're all three members of the design school. They're not like outsiders and we're allying. We're all on the same ecosystem of effort. But it feels like this does open up a whole new, almost like a spiritual channel of meaning and purpose for the work we're all trying to do. Because we can't do anything related to the Earth without recognizing that 40% of the human population only exists because of the Himalayas. It's so damn significant. And that's without saying everything about all the religions and all the culture and, there's so much here. So with that, I want to just invite the three of them to introduce themselves. I will spotlight them so that everyone can see you guys better. And I'll just play a host facilitator role from here on out. So yeah, please introduce yourselves however you'd like.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the introduction, Joe. So the three of us were joining today from the Western Himalayas in Dharamshala. This is also where the Dalai Lama is residing in exile. So a little bit about myself. I did my undergrad at Texas A&M in industrial and systems engineering. And then directly after that, jumped into my master's program at Emory studying development practice. And that's where I met Lamia. And we started having all these conversations about how development is broken and just like the nonprofit industrial complex, how it's just perpetuating like the status quo that is just continuously degenerative in especially the global South. After my first year in the program, one of the highlights about the program that I actually really enjoyed, unlike many things, was the practicum aspect of it, which allowed us to go and work with NGOs or in some people's cases, the World Bank, the IMF, or, whatever. I chose to go the grassroots route, and I spent my entire summer in 2022 up here in the Western Himalayas in Dharamshala, working with a grassroots organization called Educare India. And they're a very low resource organization, and they kind of introduced me to this kind of process where you're just able to weave different regenerative flows together and make things happen without a large capital influx, which I thought was really interesting. The entire NGO kind of operates with the alignment of schemes. And in that sense, just connecting a lot of to that, like kind of institutionalizing around that in what they call seva, which is social entrepreneurship and volunteer action. So that's how they're able to mobilize so many people throughout the entire region very fast. So that definitely piqued my interest in different kinds of strategies that we can work at the grassroots level, especially in India. After that, I went back to my second year at the master's program, and it was rough. As Joe knows very well. We definitely talked a lot about that over the last 6 months or so. And really, I was just super excited to get back to India and continue the work from last summer, as well as with a lot of the new folks that I had met in the regenerative finance space. And we've just been continuously working with them and weaving, and it's been really incredible seeing so many things fall into place. So I don't want to hog too much of the mic. I'll pass it over to Lamia to introduce herself, and then Shaan can go.
Okay, hi, my name is Lamia. I was born and raised in Bangladesh. So I did my undergrad in Bangladesh in finance. So my major was finance. And then I worked for international NGOs for around like 5 years as a communications specialist, and like I wrote stories of impact. And then I did my master's in the US in international development. And then as we were having conversations, and we realized like how broken the system is, and me being in the having that experience, and I was like, what did I do for like 5 years? Because the impact that I was writing about, it was not really it was not in the ground happening. So that really made me like realize what I was actually like doing. And then so I got for my first practicum, I was working in Nepal last year. I was there for 2 months, and then I worked with a very grassroots level, low resource organization, training youth participants in the communities into like how they can tell their stories, instead of like me being an outsider telling their stories, how we can empower the youth in the communities in telling their stories. So we did a project there. And then I went back. I fell in love with the Himalayas. And then when I went back to the US, I could not wait to come back in the Himalayas and like work here. So yeah, we've been here for the last 2.5 months working in this region.
Awesome. Hey guys, so my name is Shaan Patel. I grew up in Connecticut, USA, and I went to school, just recently finished my undergrad in environmental economics and business analytics. And while my time studying there, I did research between my school, Manhattan College, and Columbia University on sustainable decision making. And a lot of that work like kind of went into 10 different regions of how to incentivize people to make sustainable decisions in like different municipalities. And it was just mostly like frustrating watching my professor, that I was a research assistant for, kind of running around like a chicken with her head cut off, like for 40 years. And I was just like, I can really envision how like my life will turn out if I continue in this manner. And so I just looked for ways to disrupt her research. And that like led me into the space of DAOs and blockchain. And I ended up being part of the founding group of this DAO called EcoDAO. And it was just a way for us to support basically regenerative initiatives through like art and music using NFTs. And that kind of led me into like quadratic funding and different ways of kind of funding, things through the blockchain. And it got me into the Gitcoin community, and I met a lot of people that way, and becoming more ingrained in like the local place-based kind of funding the commons kind of approach. It made me part of this DAO called PackDAO, which was basically focused on mutual aid networks. And that kind of brought me to a larger global setting where I'm now and still part of Dream DAO for like the last 2 years, which is now like a DAO that's focused on bringing young kids in the space that are already doing like civic innovation and social impact in their own local communities in different countries around the world, and kind of letting them like superpower their approach through the use of blockchain and like quadratic funding. And it kind of brought me to this place now where I was like, okay, like we can not only incentivize sustainable decision making, but we can actually like actively apply it ourselves, right? And so it kind of like is a beautiful harmony that, you know, meeting these guys, like I met Kiran through Dream DAO about a year ago, and Lamia through Kiran, and you know, we've only known each other for like a handful of time, but it's felt like ages because we've kind of had gone through all these similar pathways. And yeah, just like super excited to dive more into the design school, because it's like the kind of school that I always wanted but never had, you know. So yeah, just happy to be here, and yeah, happy to learn from all you guys.
Well, thank you guys. I just want to set a little context before asking them to give a presentation, and to say that one of the organizing principles for the work they're doing in India, which is very deeply shared by us, is the idea of creating bioregional learning centers and learning ecosystems organized around landscapes. And so they, like they said, they've only been in India or back in India, depending on which person you talk to, for like 2.5 months, but they landed with the right ideas in the right moment. And so what I want them to do is share with you, so this is like passing it back to you guys, to share with you some of these projects that they're envisioning. And then I want you to see, for those of you who have never been to India, I'm just going to give you the tagline that for me says the most about India, which was in one of those big tour books when I went to India back in 2004, which was, every idea ever had by a human being has been had by someone in India.
Wait, I love that.
If it's not literally true, the spirit of it is true. The diversity of culture, the diversity of languages, the diversity of people is downright overwhelming. And I would say it's an assault on your senses. It's so overwhelming if you've never been to India. And so to say that there's innovative potential there is not because of their tech capacities. It's because of something much, much deeper. And so with that in mind, I just want to pass it right back to you guys to give a presentation that's going to give us context for our conversation today. So back to you.
Yeah, for sure. And just like building off of that, like Joe mentioned, like ever since we landed, one of the first things I've continuously noted is how chaotic everything is, but also like how things have just fallen into place in the midst of all that chaos. And that's kind of been the theme, like for the entire 2.5 months we've been here. From like the moment we landed, things just started like happening. And like, it's just like, we've just been continuously building on this momentum. And now we're like almost every single day we're meeting like new people that are just starting to align with the work. And like, oh my God, like how do we weave? Like, how do we help each other? Like yesterday, we were at the Himalayan Advocacy Center, and everyone was just like, whoa, like finally, like we can actually organize around like a larger narrative instead of us just all doing the work separately. So that's one of the most beautiful things that we're trying to do in the work that we're doing here. And it's a lot about just connecting the dots right now and like allowing these things to emerge. And with that, I'm just going to start my screen share so you guys can see the presentation that we put together. Here we go. Well, let me go to the beginning. All right, is everyone able to see this?
Yeah, we can see it.
Awesome. So as soon as Lamia and I landed, we actually were able to talk to an organization that hosted us like right away, and they kind of introduced us to the work that was happening in the Aganashini region around the river. And we were already there to talk to someone else about starting kind of like what we're calling sacred sanctuaries. So it was really awesome to start weaving like almost as soon as we got there. And from that moment on, we've just continued building on the momentum. And this is kind of the concept that we've arrived to at the moment. Good sanctuaries and are doing here. Not that we don't want to like engage with them, but it's just like we want to think about it more of as like a village. So the leadership coalition, like we've been able to forge, is between us, who are Kula, and then in the middle we have Atlantis DAO, and then on the right we have Dream DAO. Atlantis is a peer-to-peer network that is doing like using the blockchain for grassroots level regenerative economies, and they're also building an app called the Citizens app, which is incentivizing people to do sustainable decision making. So like if they have pathways to do like maybe installing solar panels at their homes, like they're able to provide that incentive through the Citizens app to do so. Dream DAO, like Shaan mentioned, is a Web3 and social impact space that has a lot of young builders under the age of 20, and they're all over the world. Currently, Shaan is like the co-steward for that organization. So it's been really awesome just trying to weave the different pathways that they have through their Explorers program into something that we're doing over here called the Rangers program, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So these are the different faces kind of leading the weaving and the initiative on the ground here. So you already know us, Kiran, Lamia, and Shaan, and then Ritu, Kiran, the other Kiran, and Nakul are from Atlantis. Narayan Shaan bag is our land steward that we found in Gumta and that we're partnering with. He's also very old friends with Ritu. So it's just like seeing how all these dots are connecting and how everyone is just super aligned is really beautiful. Amanda and Madhav are builders at Dream DAO, and Amanda's also another co-steward at Dream DAO with Shaan. And Guido is our like support for driving these solar punk ideals throughout the entire system. So that's a little bit about us. Our partners and friends, obviously the earth, we love the earth, and Hanuman is kind of our mascot. Hanuman was deeply devoted to Ram, and he ripped his chest open to show that in this photo. And we kind of feel the same way about how much we love the earth and how much we're devoted to doing this kind of regenerative work. Unorthodox Publishing Co., Earth Regenerators, obviously, and there's just a bunch of other folks here in India on the ground, including the Advocacy Center, Educare India, which is the grassroots organization I've been working with for the last year. We've been able to connect with the Gop Sangam, which is like a decentralized network of voluntary actors that are trying to build alternative solutions. And they're also running the South Asia Bioregionalism Working Group. So that's been really awesome. Panchabhuta Conservation Foundation in the south of India. And we've been able to have really awesome conversations with them from the moment we got here in India. And just there's so many more people that we've been able to connect with already. So a little bit about Sacred Sanctuary. So our goal is to promote like living in alignment with the natural world by fostering a community where people can learn and grow together. It's very much about like, how do we connect people with the incentive, but also like the people and the organizational support to create like regenerative living pathways and the circular economies that are rooted in the deep ecology and harmony with nature in these places. So the ethos is very much about access and how can we bring these kinds of models and pathways to the people where they're living and where that kind of a need is expressed. So we'd like to align with people that are already working in the communities and with local partners when it comes to land access. So yeah, we're really excited to align with the Earth Regenerators further so we can weave globally and share our knowledge as we learn things on the ground here and take things in. So a little bit about the vision. I'm just going to read this out. So we are a village. We stand at the forefront of deep ecology, prioritizing its profound interconnectedness over surface level shallow ecology. Treating every place and every being with respect, we choose love over fear and champion the diversity of permaculture over the uniformity of monoculture. We aren't just creating sanctuaries, we're nurturing the birth of anti-fragile communities prepared for a future entangled with nature. So this is at the site of our first sanctuary where we partnered with the land steward. I'm going to tell you more about this story in a little bit, but this is kind of just an intro video for the entire Sacred Sanctuaries network. So I'll just play that. Let me know if the sound works. I don't think it is.
No, we're not hearing it. And the audio is often a problem in Zoom.
You have to
Okay.
Always thinking the idea that we
Oh,
are
dear.
It's there.
a
Yeah.
spiritual essence of some kind.
I'm going to replay it just so that we give folks a chance to read the text. Hopefully it doesn't go too quickly.
That the most fascinating problem in the world is who am I? But there is in our whole way of thinking the idea that we are a soul, a spiritual essence of some kind, imprisoned inside a body. And that we look out upon a world that is foreign to us. And so therefore we speak of confronting reality, facing the facts. And this whole sensation that we are brought up to have, so people going around fundamentally feeling that they don't belong. So we've been taught to dread death as if that were the end of the show. Welcome to the human race. Now, my dear, we are playing some very complicated games, and these are the rules of the game we're playing.
I'm just going to stop it there, but this is the video in the background that's playing is on the site of where we're planning our first sacred sanctuary. And the gentleman you saw in the video towards the end over there is Narayan, who's our land steward. So I'm going to hand it over to Lamia to talk a little bit more about like the crafting the narratives and the different regions that we're working in. So let's see.
So yeah, where we are, so as Joe mentioned, India was created because of the formation of Himalayas. So if you look at on the photo on the left, so we have the Himalayas, the Indo-Gangetic plains, we have the deserts, the arid zones, we have Western Ghats, the coastals, and the photo on the right is from One Earth. So it has different bioregions. So this is the Himalayas, Himalayan forest. This is the tropical forest that stretches to the also to the Sundarbans. We have more like tropical forests here. There are like coastal forests and also some deserts here in the Malayan deserts. So as you can see, it's very diverse landscapes, the whole Indian subcontinent. It includes India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and also some parts of, Pakistan. So this is also based on the watershed. So there are a few water divides. So this is the Western Ghats. This is the Himalayas. That's another water divide that we have. And then in the middle, there is like in the central, there is another water divide. And this huge plain is the Indo-Gangetic and Brahmaputra plains that is in parallel with the Himalayas. And this is like one of our focus areas for regeneration. So narrative, as we go on with our work with the regenerating the bioregions, narrative is one of our organizing principles, and how we are crafting the narratives is informing our work. So we are using the power of narratives to drive more like transformative change at the territorial scales. So we have three major narratives that we're working on. So one is rethinking the urban livelihoods, which includes inclusive and sustainable urban development. One is regenerating the Indo-Gangetic plain, which addresses the soil degradation, water scarcity, and agricultural sustainability. Another narrative that we have is conserving the biodiversity of coastal India, which mainly focuses on improving the stewardship of marine biodiversity in the coastal plains of India. So all these sub-narratives are being created with the community, and we're using this collective storytelling to inspire more social change, and we're using this as a tool to lead people to live more sustainably and regeneratively. So the one of the major narratives that we have is improving the stewardship of coastal and marine biodiversity in coastal India. And the storyline starts with conserving the last free-flowing river in India, which is called the Agnashini. So this is where our journey in India began. And the first sanctuary that we have is in the Agnashini village. And so when we were in the Agnashini area, we were collecting stories of people who are in and which explored the connection of people with the river, and that how the river is sustaining them. So so as we say, it's the last free-flowing river in India. So there's been no human intervention, but there were a lot of few proposals about like building dams or building like ports. So there was one proposal to build an industrial port in this estuary, which in 2009, and then after 10 years of struggle and protests from the communities, it was delisted in 2020. So, and now we are working with an organization in Kumta called the Panchabhuta Conservation Foundation, which is working in conserving this last free-flowing river in India. What we're trying to build in the areas is that this is the site for the estuary. So the rivers originates in Sirsi and flows all the way through these valleys and meets the Arabian Sea here. So this is the area which is around like 2,000 acres, which is called the Agnashini estuary, where we're working with this partner, Panchabhuta, to build an eco hub that will promote more regenerative livelihoods for the people living in the estuary, as well as like promote more nature-based enterprises to create more revenue, more flows for the people who are living in that area. So our next narrative is regenerating the Indo-Gangetic Plain. So the Indo-Gangetic Plain is one of the largest plains, and I think it's also one of the densely populated plains as well. And there's like more than 500 million people living in that plain. And like being here for the last couple of days, we have seen how the monsoon has affected this region. And what we are trying to do is how we can harness this power, this flow of water, and build more water resilient human settlement in this region. And how we are that's how we are crafting our narrative, that how we can have more like water resilient ecosystems and like promote more innovative technologies like micro hydro grid or like watershed management, and all this technologies and systems to integrate into the lives of these people and like build more resilient systems in this region. So as you can see, this is the Great Plain of North India, and this is the Indo-Gangetic Plain, and it has like Rajasthan Plain, like 5 different plains, and the rivers Indus and the Ganga and the Brahmaputra are the main rivers that are flowing in this plain. another narrative that we think is equally important is how we rethink urban livelihoods, because as we are building all these sanctuaries, maybe there are people who won't be able to like uproot themselves and like come start living in the sanctuaries. But how do we bring all this regenerative life, regenerative pathways to these people who are living in the urban spaces? And like I've always lived in a city, and like as I think more about how we like live more regeneratively, I want to like grow food on my rooftop with how much space I have, and how do I harvest more energy, like my own like water, like energy, like into my living like urban space. So we are working on like how we can rethink more urban livelihoods, and by integrating more like green surplus systems, fostering more self-sustainability, promoting more like holistic communal well-being in urban spaces. So like urban areas are the ones where the human are going to suffer the most. So we have to like rethink how we can have more sustainable and like more regenerative urban spaces. So our storyline for the rethinking urban livelihood starts in Bangalore. So this is the hydrology of Bangalore, the district. So there are like over 800 lakes in that city, and due to like encroachment and pollution, the lakes are dying. So like this organization that works in like more water conservation, Pani, they said how the Bangalore from this, like it became from the city of lakes to the city of lake activists. So this is like one of the major narratives that we're working with on how we can rethink all these urban livelihoods, starting from Bangalore. So that's where one of our like urban sanctuaries is going to be placed. And now Shaan's going to talk about more about how we are building the network and the platform for the sanctuary.
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest thing is, from what Lamia spoke about, is the narratives that really guide our kind of design pathway. You know, it is this type of thing where we have to find a way to do like like a harmony between the analog approaches that we're doing on the ground and also the digital approaches online. And so that kind of comes to this place for the sanctuaries, where we have a network platform that we're currently building out with the goal of a place for people to kind of congregate online in the same way how maybe Mighty Networks might work for the design school and the Earth Regenerators community. It's kind of taking it to the next level of having there be a little bit more interaction. So that starts with like a knowledge hub, mostly things that are written by users, people that are, you know, coming to these sanctuaries. And this is like, can be thought of as a digital repository, storing all the information we hold dear to ourselves and got us to this point, to kind of like steward that knowledge. And then also a place for, you know, local knowledge to like come to light, mostly like ancient wisdom. I think this is like one of the maybe the most important value propositions of the platform, just because we need a place to store all this information and also have like sovereignty over it. So that is where, like, on the back end of the knowledge hub, you know, things will not be hosted like through a cloud provider service. You know, it will be hosted through a decentralized ledger. And it's not this type of thing that is only like leveraging the information that is put by users. It's also this place that is also information that is read by users. And that's where we go into kind of like the interactive map that allows people to explore kind of all the interconnections of different sanctuaries and allow them to be able to look at it like a macro level and zoom in and dive deeper into each sanctuary, ultimately like from a sustainable tourism aspect, but also more so as a way for people to engage further based on their locality, right? And so like for India, for example, you know, a lot of it will be like you're starting from the view of the continent and then you're zooming into it, like kind of like an Airbnb situation. But the cool thing is that it's an integration of concurrent data that is coming in through the digital measurement, reporting, and verification methods that we're using in conjunction with other applications that are being used on the ground. This is something that has allowed us to like convey the values that we are kind of putting across with this network. And so that leads into like more project planning, allowing people to engage further with each sanctuary in like a community engagement way. So this is happening like where conversations that are happening on the ground are allowed to like have another place to like, you know, evolve online. Like in this forum-based UI, we're thinking it maybe as a place kind of like discourse where it's very customizable and the platform fosters like the dialogue that we want, you know, to happen naturally, kind of similar to Mighty Networks, but more so of a place where it's like a digital commons where, you know, individuals are able to come in and, you know, like find their place and kind of ask questions and be able to like take conversations further that happen on the ground and maybe they're no longer there and able to like, you know, evolve it. And that's all kind of like glued together by the integrated digital measurement, reporting, and verification system, which is like leveraging the Citizens app that Atlantis now is creating. So we'll dive more into that at the next slide. So the Atlantis Citizens app is like what Kiran explained, is this kind of P2P network that is working by leveraging kind of bounties, local impact bounties to incentivize sustainable decision-making on the ground. The first thing is it starts as, you know, someone who is trying to incentivize a certain like regenerative economic flow, like let's say, you know, cleaning up a local well or in as simple as maybe like planting or getting rid of invasive species. It's a way in which we can disperse in what their utility token, which is called karma, to people to reward them for those sustainable decisions that they make. And this is all kind of like glued together in the same way of how the DMRV is gluing our platform app together with the impact oracle. This like oracle is a way for data to be able to like be kind of edged together between the different nodes in the network, helping users that come on to the app discover new impact bounties near their area and their locality, and also understand like what is working and what is not working through like the concurrent eco data that is coming through from the completion of these impact bounties. And then it all comes together because of that. Like what makes the oracle, the impact oracle, like function in essence is the ability to have certificates for impact. They're calling them hyper certificates because you can, you know, have it in a way where you have an impact dashboard that shows kind of this spectrum of certificates that are proving impact for different decisions or you know, opportunities that have either been created and then fulfilled to like create a component or a varying amount of components to kind of like bring the legitimization for what is happening on the ground, right? And so like that's ultimately like what puts the money where our mouth is kind of thing, or particularly for the users, because at the end of the day, like the only thing that makes the Citizens app function are like the citizens that make up the app, right? It's not really like us coming in and like putting up a bunch of bounties. It's really like this kind of very grassroots level where the community is building whatever the future of the app is. It's just the methodologies are kind of already programmed in because it's possible now with this technology. And so I think that's where it makes it very important for us to understand how like we're relying on third-party systems that like the Sacred Sanctuaries platform interacts with in accordance with the Citizens app. A big one that has supported us up to this point, as well as the Earth Regenerators community, is just the impact financing, something that has been built into the Citizens app, and through that is being built into the Sanctuaries platform, where we're able to like involve social and environmental challenges through a variety of places and be able to get people to like contribute to those directly through different like, funding and financial instruments like quadratic funding. And that's been like a really interesting way for us to find different ways to bootstrap, bounties or actually just like regenerative initiatives that are taking up on the ground. And so that's kind of like an example of the pre-existing citizens app nodes that already exist in different areas. Like there's one here in India, Node India, that like has different solar and regenerative agriculture projects. There's one in Turkey that is doing more like social action and then also like water conservation, as well as also just like, regenerative agriculture in the same, but like different sense, like they're farming hemp, as opposed to maybe farming like Ayurvedic plants. And this is the type of thing where these nodes, when implemented into different functional landscapes, it allows like for something what we're trying to do with the sacred sanctuaries to have more interpretive centers where the local context is taken into consideration rather than, just putting out a bunch of bounties and like seeing what happens. It's like a kind of more, calculated approach to the sustainable decision making than just like, trying to incentivize for the sake of incentivizing. And that's like kind of coming into this place where now we're realizing we need to weave more with young builders. And that's where DreamDAO, this DAO that I've been a part of since the inception, has been coming into like a real alignment with us, because from the start of DreamDAO, we started this thing called the Explorers program, which it was just a place for there to be like this learning journey that ended up having like ultimate goal where, at the end of the learning journey and throughout it, like the builders had the expectation that they were ultimately going to be put in a position or like an internship to like showcase those learnings and those skills like in a practical setting. And like it's come to this point where like it's not enough in a sense, like it's very remote, and a lot of it is also just like tedious work, kind of like in some ways exploiting these young builders that are like, at the end of the day, like I'm so inspired by every day because, they're just so smart. And it's this type of thing where what we're trying to do with the Rangers program, which is this place-based impact work, allows there to be like a more perpetual pathway to take place with the Explorers program, giving like what every builder came into DreamDAO with this idea of like, the work they were already doing on the ground and how it can be powered by like the digital blockchain landscape, and having them not get like lost in that area, and having them to like recenter back to like the regeneration that they ultimately wanted to create in the beginning. And so it has this pathway where the builders are able to become mentors themselves, to scale the network, instead of having it just be like this only merit-based network of like people who had pre-existing merit. It allows like new merit to come into the system, and that allows for more empowerment and capacity building, where like the real world internships are important, right? Because like there's just like necessary like organizational skills that happen in the DAO landscape that teach these kids at a young age on like how to cooperate and coordinate, like without anyone telling them what to do. But at the same time, very quickly, when they're not together and they're not in a place, like things fizzle very quickly, like in a startup kind of culture. So the Rangers, which are like graduated explorers, can act as local mentors to foster like the knowledge exchange through generations of like the program, evolving. And so that amount of leadership allows us to like connect the community and have the network grow, not only inside like one area of sacred sanctuaries, but into like new landscapes, right? Not only in India, but in let's say in Brazil or Mexico, because a lot of builders are from there. This is like this type of thing where like bringing these young builders in, like really has opened up a new landscape for innovation and tangible contributions, just because like they're engaging in a way that like we aren't able to engage, because they see it with such a different lens, in a way that like when they start working locally after the fact of like experiencing kind of like all the wrong onboarding experiences they've had, it kind of allows them to like influence the evolution in a way that has a better kind of circumstance with the geographical location, because a lot of them want to stay where they are and impact the local areas that they grew up in. And so it's this type of thing where like, who knows better than them about, you know, what are the pain points and like, I guess like the precipice of things to happen in the future for their local setting. So it's been really cool to kind of experience that with young builders, and just excited to see like what they're gonna do, because there's so much potential there. And that's where we get into like the ranger program and like a more granular setting. It's kind of how the design school operates, but more in an applied learning way, where where it's like place-based, because the Sanctuary Ranger program like is ultimately like having these builders that are already like social entrepreneurs and doing volunteer action, but combining it with like a little bit more of a guided framework that kind of Dreamed Out lacks in a way, because it's just like it's not place-based. And we've been kind of inspired by the theory view framework by Otto Schormer, which aims to empower this young generation as the custodians of nature. We've been taking a specific kind of approach from the theory view integration called case clinics, which allows us to weave in like a curriculum and a suite of activities that allow for applied learning in a kind of like U-shaped journey, where like I like to think of it in the sense of like, obviously you go through this sensing, presencing, and realizing phase, and it's mostly just like, you know, internalization, legitimization, and externalization phase, where, you know, a lot of it is nature based, right? Like the first part is just, you know, touching grass and getting out there in nature and like doing like, you know, normal things that are normal to us in terms of outdoor activities, but it's like this phase that inspires like the innovative thinking that they're already having for the environmental challenges in the local setting. And so I think that's where it's cool, where it allows a lot to happen just in the beginning, like kind of what we're experiencing now with like narratives just revealing themselves to us, and we're just like here like kind of letting them, you know, take place. And it's that type of thing where, you know, the realization phase allows for that development and like practicum that kind of, you know, inspired Kiran and Lamia to kind of like take it to a next level to develop their own initiative, you know, and identify like the sustainability challenges here in India. And so, yeah, I think that like, this is a very important outcome, where like it gives builders who don't have this tangible like idea of like what they're gonna really get out of in terms of social and environmental impact when it comes into like a DAO setting, but then like it actually gives them a North Star to like gain some actual knowledge, skills, like a sense of agency to connect like their digital world to their natural world, and empower like the people, like their family that they're constantly trying to empower to also be custodians of nature. And it's honestly this thing where it's like there's already naturally they've been so quick to inspire each other to do this stuff and like live in harmony with their local environment, and, you know, go out and touch grass, as simple as it might sound. And it's this type of thing where they're just so ready to equip themselves to create this regenerative change. So yeah, that's something that's like real core to the Sacred Sanctuaries platform, and also just, you know, the network in general.
Awesome. I'll pick up there. So yeah, like Shaan just talked about the platform and the different kinds of pathways for like involvement from like from a very intergenerational level are all there. But one thing that a movement needs is like kind of that space in the functional landscape for it to actually happen. And that's kind of where we go back in a holistic sense to like figuring out like the places that we can work from the community with the community. And in doing so, we're just applying like permaculture ethics and principles taken from Mollison. We care for the earth, care for the people, and how we can govern abundance. This photo on the right is at the gentleman in the middle on the bottom. He's an elderly gentleman in one of the communities that we're working in here in Himachal Pradesh, and it's close, but I think it's about 45 minutes from where we are right now in Dharamshala. And on the right and left of him are two workers in a geriatric care program. And currently we're helping the organization Educare weave like the pathways for geriatric care and like intergenerational bonding with like a botanical garden project they're also undertaking. That's very much about how do we allow people to think about health more holistically. So if you're able to care for the earth, you're also able to, or you're letting it take care of you as well. So that's kind of the ethos that we're approaching that project with them. And the eventual goal, like we're in the planning stages of creating like a sanctuary space over here with Educare in partnership. They already they're already like stewards of the land. So now it's just like, how do we utilize the land in a way that is aligning different kinds of patterns that they're already working in. So a little bit about the different design pathways in the different functional landscapes of the sacred sanctuaries. So we have like the interpretive center, which is the analog and on the ground version of what we're building on the platform. So it's a culture and natural ecology knowledge bank. And this is very place-based and very dependent on like the different local contexts. For instance, like even if you just drive 20 minutes south of here, they're going to be speaking in a different dialect. So those are all different kinds of things that we're trying to bring in through the interpretive center to hold. The second one in the interpretive center is like we want to like kind of have an art and storytelling residency to help steward the narratives of the work that's going on the ground. That will also help us to see the different kind of regenerative flows and connections that people can make in the communities. And then obviously we want to have the sanctuary as a place for rangers to come and help steward the narrative and also connect the dots as weavers in the local communities. This will also be a place for there to be applied learning workshops, after school programs, nature-based wellness, permaculture training, intergenerational belonging, raw material processing. And then we also want to have that post-workshop support. So that way we're not just delivering like training and capacity building, but we're also extending like the pathways for them to actually make something of that. And that's kind of behind the framework of SEVA, which is that social entrepreneurship and volunteer action. How can people actually create like social entrepreneurship opportunities out of the workshops? And how can we support that out of the different interpretive centers? The sanctuaries themselves are planned to be like self-sustaining. So that way once we get them set up, that we don't actually need to continue to like have an influx of capital going into them. So we're going to have like a food production system and like the integrated animal husbandry. And a lot of this is like modeled off of just like permaculture design. One of the things that we're planning in Kumta is also like an experiment lab where we can have like a different microclimates and experiment with soil and like have a soil lab. Also just like experiment with vertical farming first. This one is actually going to be more in like the Bengaluru sanctuary. So that way it's more of like an urban space. And then the low carbon tech MRV, which is going to help bring in that eco data for the platform and the sanctuaries on there. The last one is kind of experimenting with natural building architecture. Especially here in Himachal, we've already learned that cement and a lot of these new development techniques are not very resilient at all, as you've seen buildings just floating away in the news. And one of the very ancient architecture techniques here is called Kathkuni. And these things are like, these kinds of architecture styles are way more resilient to climate, and they've been tested over centuries. and they're kind of something that we want to bring back into our sanctuary spaces. So one of our friends in Shimla, which is about 6 hours from here, is an architect, and he's very keen to experiment on different kinds of natural building architectures, especially for this region. So we're in discussions with him to create a sanctuary space that's more geared towards that. So one of the important things about each sanctuary is not every single pathway will be applied in that, because obviously in the urban setting sanctuary, we're not going to be able to have an entire garden space to grow our own food and stuff, or nor are we going to have livestock. But this is kind of like the overarching design pathways for every single sanctuary. And then we're creating a handbook as more sanctuaries start to emerge and the connections are made at the local level. These are the kinds of things that people can look at applying into their space that they're working in. So this photo is in the south of India in Gumta at the mouth of the Aganashini, where we were able to talk with Panchabhuta Conservation Foundation, who's interested in creating like a wetlands research center centered around the conservation of the river. And we are still talking with them about how we can also create that into like a kind of a sanctuary space and allow rangers to come and build the infrastructure for that kind of work to happen on a very long-term time scale. The project that Panchabhuta is currently in talks with of stewarding is like a partnership with the government, and the time scale for that is like 60 years minimum. So the kinds of things that we're talking about are and planning for are, we're trying to build a lot of resilience into from the beginning, and also like the pathways and the documentation, so that way we're able to replicate more easily. So I want to talk a little bit about like the replicating model for the land stewardship that we're using right now. And it all begins with that the stories and the narratives of belonging and the landscape regeneration. So we're basically our entry point usually is like with an NGO that's already working in the space, or personal connections, or just people that we happen to talk to and meet. And a lot of times, like as soon as you strike up a conversation about something about this, a lot of folks are very interested, just because they're seeing a lot of patterns of things that are collapsing, and they're thinking about like how to build resilience into their own lives very long term. So the next thing is coming to an agreement with like the landowner in a way that it's like a win-win for them and us. And then we conduct a case study of like the different regenerative flows that are already there. So basically this is like an assessment of the land or the structure that's on the land as well, and just kind of see what we're dealing with before we proceed. So then we basically partner with the landowner to facilitate like the formation of that like local governance system. So each sanctuary kind of operates independently from others, but through the network, we're able to do the knowledge sharing and the connection with other sanctuaries that we want to have in that region, and then also outside that region. So then together we identify the different pathways, such as the interpretive center, the food production system, anything else that may be applicable in their landscape. And then we think about how can we build these identified pathways out together. The next one we have is like utilizing the interpretive center and with and for the community to apply those applied learning journeys and improve the collective understanding and the stewardship of that local landscape. So the kind of model is we go in and we kind of build out one sanctuary with the local partner, and the grand vision is that we're able to inspire the entire community, kind of transform their own landscapes into like a sanctuary model. It doesn't necessarily need to be tied to our network. So in that sense, it's kind of like an open source, like decentralized way to like replicate this kind of a model. So like we definitely through our anchor sanctuary in our region, we're able to connect with other locals that are interested in this kind of stuff, and then also help to empower them through the applied learning workshops, the interpretive center. And then next is like leveraging the regenerative flows as they emerge to like weave with the Citizens app. So this is right now the simplest and most easy way for us to like give people the incentive in these local communities to go and do regenerative things. A lot of times, especially in very rural areas, a lot of our partners have noticed, and just people in general, they're not really interested or have the capacity to think very long term in the sense of regeneration. So it becomes really important to how can we align what they're already doing with this larger vision for what is possible. So it's like we're creating like a North Star for a community with them. And especially like the land steward that we're partnering with, who's usually understanding of like what the grander vision is. And then we're able to facilitate like the regenerative flows and align them with the North Star. So it's kind of like a design problem in each kind of locality. How can we, with people that may not necessarily understand why they're doing this, but like we just allow them to do that, whether it be like just going fishing, like they're not going to stop going fishing and then try to do something that's more sustainable immediately. But like, how do we connect the dots with them and someone else in the community to create that regenerative flow in a more local way? So that's a little bit about the land stewardship model. So this is our first case study in Kumta. And this is our community partner, Narayan, here on the right with his family. And he's good friends with Ritu Suresh from Atlantis DAO. So he was kind of our entry point into Kumta alongside Panchabhuta conservation. And Narayan is very much on board with what we're doing, and we're being able to co-create these different design pathways with him. He has his own motivations for partnering with us, and it just happens to align very well, just because he sees what we're doing as kind of like good in the communal aspect, and he's able to steward that along with the community, and himself look good in the process of doing so, because he eventually wants to run for like local office. So in a sense, this is going to become more of like a community center for him to help the people in his local area. And he's been a resident there for almost his entire life. So he's a really awesome partner to work with. So on the right here is our visit in towards the end of May to the sanctuary site. So as you can see right now, it's just mostly unkept land, unproductive. There is a well on the land towards the back over there. And so Narayan over here, we basically were able to hold these conversations about like, how can we design this into a sanctuary space that acts as like an anchor for more regenerative actions at the local level. So this is a few more photos from our site visit down there. This is Ritu on the right over here with Lamia. And then this is like a local gardener and person who knows the local ecologies very well. So we were just having a conversation with him. And I don't speak Kannada, but that's another really cool part about having like a local land steward, and that's part of the community who's able to like help us in the process of designing these things, and they're very much able to take ownership on the work. So it's not so much like we're going in and trying to like almost like colonize the land in a sense. It's very much like, how do we partner with the local people that are aligned with the work from the very beginning to set those like anchor sanctuaries that we can work out of and build together on. So this is kind of like the preliminary just site design for the Kumta Sanctuary. You'll notice that there's also a school here on the left. So Narayan also has connections there, so we're able to facilitate like after school programs already across the street. And then this is kind of where the workshop and the interpretive center is planned to be. It's under like a nice tree, and it'll just be like a space for gatherings, like a kind of a third space for the community. And then we're gonna have like growing zones on this side, and the well and the water feature is over here already. And then we're planning to build like the earth architecture living space over here that will be able to host rangers eventually. So the idea with the ranger program is people are going to be able to come and experience like a regenerative kind of style of life and become a part of that web of life that's existing in this space. And then obviously partake in the community experiences and interpretive center, and then be able to weave with them while they're staying on site. So the idea with the Ranger program is these are kind of going to be those applied learning centers where people are able to come and experience what it means to live more regeneratively. And then the idea is like we also trying to create the pathways for them to go and create their own sanctuaries as part of the Ranger program. So that's a little bit about how we can replicate. So that's the entire presentation that we have right now. So right now, one of our main focuses is just like, weaving together different stories that are already here, and just kind of allowing them to emerge in our functional landscape, which is the sacred sanctuary. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then we can open it up for discussion.
Yeah, thank you guys for that beautiful presentation. I think this maybe gives us a feel for the richness of what is emerging in India with this one group of people. I'm thinking that there's probably a lot more in India that's also happening. What I'd like to just draw emphasis to and then open up for any kind of question or discussion is I want to draw emphasis to the importance of thinking like a network. And how rarely people do this. And also just make one other observation from the comments that Kiran and Lamia both have made about working with NGOs. Notice the absence of NGOs. They're working directly with land stewards and communities. And then through things like DreamDAO, they're co-creating from the ground up, they're co-creating the emergent participatory structures, which means you don't need big NGOs, you don't need governments. Now you'll intersect with them wherever you need to, but I just want to name those two pieces because there really is a very, very different way of doing things. And just giving full respect to that. So I'd love to open it up to questions, comments that anyone has. Penny first. Penny's ready.
I just have one thing that just jumped out at me, which is the involving the youth in this way. We've been talking about that in the design school, and we're like, how do we do this? And just seeing how that you can pull them in through the technology, through the DAOs and these young builders, and then bring them to the ground. And that's like, that really stands out to me as a really good way to bring the youth into this. So just wanted to highlight that and say, wow, that's incredible. So
yeah. And that was actually one of the main reasons we started pursuing like the more urban setting as well, just because a lot of the young builders are in the cities. And not all of them are going to be willing to take a overnight bus ride to where we're working in Gumta and stay there in a remote place where Wi-Fi is not the most stable. So we're trying to definitely weave in the urban spaces, mostly to create that pathway for people to experience that kind of a thing in an urban space. And so that would be more inclined to go and try it out in like a more rural setting as well. So, yeah.
Totally. Other questions or comments? Observations, fist bumps. Susanna.
I mean, it's an amazing vision. It's fantastic, of course, but implementation, I think you're going to find a lot of challenges here with implementation. Like in my experience, living here for 20 years, it's quite something like to take forward this kind of plans. I think the most important is to build a good network of people, create an ecosystem and start slowly in one location, understand the needs as well, because you have in mind this organical kind of growth, but I think you're going to need also to get some funding, because when you work with farmers here, I mean, I was in the Himalayas last year in research for 4.5 months, because I told you already, we wanted to implement there, because of course, working with medicinal aromatic plants, the Himalayas is like, is absolutely incredibly rich. And so I was there on research, I was on my own, I went to Nepal. I had meetings with community forest users groups. I was in the grassroots, and it's really difficult to mobilize them. They are not so much into how to say, good intentions than money. This is always the first question: how much you bring. So even though they don't have a plan, or they don't know how they're going to spend the money, this is the first question always. So I think the funding part is going to really play an important part here. You will see that you are going to need to go with some money, to get people to actually at the grassroots to really take part on this, because at the end of the day, this is totally a grassroots project. So I think you have the people in the city, the builders and so on, the people you are connected to, but the grassroots is you're gonna really have to kind of spend time with them and see how they breathe and how they react and what is it that they want and what is it that it moves them. Because for example here, farmers in Kerala now, they're getting subsidies, women farmers in Kerala. So they're very simple people, and they're still very tribal, in the sense that in the tribe you hunt an antelope, and you don't go for hunting until the antelope is finished. That means to say there is not this medium term vision or long term vision that we have. For them is, how do we make money today? That's it. So this is something that you are going to face, and you are going to need to, navigate. Of course, you're already having this fantastic partner. What's his name? Narayan. Yeah. So that is, that is great that you're already having some contacts and you're starting weaving, because they've been doing this for a long time. So they will be really the ones who can facilitate the way to implement this project. It's fantastic. I mean, count on me, absolutely. Sacred sanctuaries. So of course, when you work with land restoration and land regeneration here, medicinal forests, they just grow spontaneously. So every region and every state have their own herbs and plants. So let's do that. Let's do something with that. And monetize it, because we're going to have to. We're going to have to bring funding gradually, but we need to support the economies at the grassroots. We need to facilitate the flows of resources where they are most needed. And what these people need, really, especially women, it's some basic economic power, so that they can step up in leadership roles within their families, and after that within their communities. And I think this is like a biggest untapped potential, is working with women at the grassroots, get them on your side. So we are thinking about, how do we really get them involved? Like, of course, like making them participants of the project, like with shares, actually, so they need to see that there is some income coming, and we need to boost that flow of resources to the grassroots. So I mean, let's do it.
Well, a quick comment along those lines. We're seeing exactly what Susanna's describing is what's happening in Barichara. And we have a project here called Casa Común, and a local cooperative called Mujer Vida that's been around since the 1990s, so about 30 years. And so it's basically a network of women, and they've been creating local economic models and local exchange around solidarity, and then building from that the flows that you can prototype a community currency on. And prototype other things, like to have a shared branding for the local tourism market, where all of the returns come back into a community fund that is managed by the producers, with them getting a revenue share. And this kind of cooperative ownership model, which of course there are many versions of, has been led by women. And of course there are men involved, but almost all of the leadership is from women. And I don't think that's accidental. So I think what Susanna is describing is really important, and also very doable. It's hard work in the sense you have to go at the speed of trust. You may go frustratingly slow at times because the trust has to be earned and authentic, but it's extremely powerful. So just echoing what Susanna is saying.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. The work over here in Himachal with our local partner is very slow because it's all very much trust-based and like very much like, since it's also a very low resource place, and we kind of go in with the mindset that everything that we need is already there. So we're just kind of connecting the dots, aligning different things. So in that sense, like everyone kind of wins in the coordination game, and we're also able to do a lot with no money. Elliot, I think I saw your hand first, so if you want to jump
Come on
in.
in, Ellie.
Cool. Yeah, I was driving through that presentation, so I didn't catch all of the slides, but it all sounds good, and I've got some homework to do. I don't even know what a DAO is, a DAO. But that's all right. So, and from what I understand, you've been working on this for kind of more intensely just a few months, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, if you feel that as people you've changed over the past 3 months, and if so, in what ways?
That's a great one. I think we were like reflecting about this, like I think last night or 2 nights ago. For me personally, I feel like I'm more free and just more alive than ever in that sense, because it's very much like we left the academia and like being trapped, and then we came over here, and like from the moment like we had our boots on the ground, it was just like we're not even really doing any work. It's just like everything is just kind of happening around us, and we're just connecting a bunch of dots that we're seeing with the people that are around us, the connections and networks, and it's just been a really beautiful process. Like I don't know where the time is going.
Yeah, I would say for me, the change would be like I've always lived in cities, and now we're living in Himalayas, and like even the interactions that we have with the community here every day, it's like you learn something new every day. So that's like the learning of something new every day is what like we love about the work that we're doing here.
Yeah, I mean, along the same lines, I feel like it's been this kind of like flow of time where a lot of the ways back in the US, I was going against the grain, going against the current, and now it kind of feels like we're able to be more like water and just flow and have it flow through us. So it's been beautiful in that way.
Heck yeah. Great question, Elliot. Brad,
Yeah.
on to you whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thanks. I was just that was really amazing. And like I said in my comments, I think there's a lot of things about the DAOs and the blockchain funding and stuff that I is way over my head as well. But just on a personal experience, I learned to fly in the Himalaya, and I spent a bit of time in Dharamsala, actually near Beer, 50 kilometers east of you. Yeah. And so I still have a lot of friends in like outdoor sports. Paragliding. So, if you go to Manali and stuff, and a good friend there who was in the development, Ajay Kumar, I'm thinking his father does, a lot of gathering of local herbs as a business.
Okay.
But so I just wanted to like step back to like what somebody else was saying, and it just made me think about like, the idea of like starting small and stuff. Like I'm just thinking, what was the story of capitalism and how it pervaded everything so thoroughly and so deeply? Like, was that the intention? Did it start small? Like, and so is the reaction to that also? And then from my personal experience, like, the caution against like not dreaming big, like dream audacious, dream big. And the people who don't want to hang around with you are the people you don't want to hang around with.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, so I just, yeah, so I'd, yeah, love to, just so many people I'm thinking of that would just really benefit from hearing this conversation. And, just even I was trying to do, there's an Australian guy that developed, the Himalayan rocket stove. Have you guys come across that?
I'm not.
Yeah, he's been selling it in Manali, Himachal Pradesh and stuff. But just thinking about all these different things, but they're not like connected. And I'm just hearing with you guys like an understanding of systems and how things are connected. So yeah, it's just really, really inspiring. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Brad.
Well, one thing I'd like to name that can start to bring us closer to a close, because we're about the time to close in a couple of minutes, which is I want to reinforce and elaborate something that Brad said about being systems thinkers, which is there are very, very few systems thinkers in the world, statistically speaking, and there are very, very, very many fewer systems doers who can embody systems among the systems thinkers. Most systems thinkers make diagrams and are engineers and don't actually have good relationships with people and places. And so to get to this depth of being an embodied systems doer, which is what regenerative living is, what it actually is dancing with systems, is a really important thing to name. And I would say the chaotic way you landed 2.5 months ago, and the way that you have felt into the clarity of these patterns and felt into them through the context of where you're interacting is a way of dancing with real systems. And this is something that I think is going to be really important for us to hold, which is that while there aren't very many of us on this call today, all of us gathering around what we're doing in the design school, and what those of us who are allied to the design school, whether they're part of it or not, basically those of us who are trying to live this way, like when I talked to the Buckminster Fuller Institute yesterday, and they're trying to create a planetary network of regenerative bioregions, and there are other people that are too, and we're all coming into alignment with each other. What's been missing is the learning communities that are actually practicing at this level.
Yeah.
So for the three of you to be young people who have learned these ideas, who are now practicing them, and then to have a learning community to practice with, it's like, oh, well, Brad's in Grand Junction, Colorado, and he's got all these friends in the Himalayas, which I didn't even know about until you mentioned them a couple of minutes ago. But with this learning community, because we're all trying to do this, or thinking of what Benji's been holding for the Colorado River Basin, which is basically a narrative strategy. If you want to pick what is the most important thing of the regenerating of the Colorado River, it's a narrative that allows a coherence to emerge. And then there are lots of facilitation, I might say innovations of facilitation for the narrative to manifest. And so in that way, it's the same thing. The contexts are different, they're working in different ways, but we need to be able to share with each other. And so I feel like in this last hour and a half, we've been able to bear witness to the way you're dancing with systems. And as Brad and Susanna both role modeled in their comments, and to share practical advice, connections, and support so that we can embody this dance together. And so what I feel like has been born in the last hour and a half is the beginning of a collaboration. So it's very nascent, but it's the beginning of a collaboration. How do we collaborate from here forward to create this planetary network of regenerative bioregions that can bring the support to you, to the geographic scope that you're focusing on, and that you can bring connections and inspiration and learning and other things to the other places that are going to need them as well. And so this bi-directional, really multi-directional learning, it's not bi-directional, it's multi-directional.
There's something you're interested in. Can I tie that for you, Haroon? Can I tie your shorts for you?
And so Benji's got his hand up, so I'll pass it to him and then we'll come to close. Benji.
Yeah, I'll make this really quick. Partly because I don't feel very good and I want to hide, but I do want to just tack on to what Joe said and say we're in the process of some really exciting experiments, prototypes around story of place, around what Joe alluded to, this exploration of narrative and how these narrative processes and spaces that are created can really help us to learn how to practice and to become instruments of activation and regeneration. And we are, I think, getting ready to really dive deep with other subcontinental scales like the Great Lakes and Cascadia and the Northern Andes and the Acadian forests. Like, I think that the need for shared design space and discussion for this is just growing all the time. And so I just wanted to invite you all to reach out to me at any point. This is getting exciting. This is getting really exciting. And there's just so much for us to learn together, my God. And your structure is quite different, but there's just really compelling parallels and patterns that I'm seeing. I think we can really make a lot of sense. The question for me is, like, we're all so busy. How do we get together in that design space at that scale and make the most out of it? So that's one of the things I'm kind of inquiring into and exploring. But like I said, I'll leave it at that, and I'm going to climb into a hole.
Thank you, Benji.
Benji.
So Kiran and the gang, Kiran, Lamia, and Shaan, is there anything you'd like to say in closing today?
Oh man.
Thank you so much for giving us the space to share our journey and what we've been up to, and looking forward to like all the connections that emerge from this and the work that we're going to be doing together and learning together.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. The Earth Regenerators community has been super inspirational. And it's just been awesome being a part of it so far, and can't wait to see what we can do together.
Yeah. We said it all. we just love you guys, and like we're just feeling as if this is one big happy family, just ever growing. So thank you.
Well, I think I can confidently say the feeling is mutual for all of us here now. It was already mutual for me, but now it's definitely mutual for all of us. So what I love about this is that we're right now in a place where we can start to feel, what would it mean to weave across continents? And because the design school, which is also only like 4.5 months old as a design school since March, is already organizing heavily in North America. And we have not yet figured out how to connect it to all that I'm connected with, which is networks and networks of many other people doing things in Central and South America. And that is beginning to find coherence. Yeah. Which is sort of like so fast. It's like really amazing just to find any coherence would be amazing at this point. And then we're already finding coherence with India, with what you all are doing. And you can just feel that there is something planetary happening. This is something that we are all just leaning into that is emerging in the world. And so, so we will find the way to hold it. Not we here, I mean, we humanity, we will figure out how to hold it somehow. And so I think this has been a really nice little 90-minute experiment in holding it. And I'll be sharing the video link. I'll be passing the video link on to you guys to share with anyone you like. It's not like, this is not design school trademark. No, this is us collaborating together. And so, so thank you guys for presenting, for sharing your learnings, for giving us all something to think about and to feel into. And we look forward to seeing what we can do together from here. So onward we go. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, guys.